This is a cheap pair of sunglasses. I bought them the other day from the petrol station for $16 because my other good sunglasses broke after about 3 years. Now these have all of the ingredients of sunglasses. They have 2 lenses, a frame, a seat for your nose, and they should be able to fit on my face and provide some level of protection from the sun. I don't particularly like the look of them. It's all just gloss black, but they were only $16. The build quality isn't that great. The lens has already fallen out just when I tried to clean them, and they're made entirely of plastic. But I don't care because they were $16. I'm not sure if they actually provide protection from UV rays, but they are fairly dark tinted. The only problem is they don't really sit on my face very well. There's a big gap on this side and it touches my cheek down here, but not on this side. So they're kind of not completely symmetrical. But I don't care because they were $16. The Chery Omoda 5 is like the petrol station sunnies of cars. It has all of the ingredients of an SUV, 4 wheels, a cabin, some seats inside, an engine, and some ground clearance, which will provide some level of off-road capability. But like these sunnies, the recipe of the ingredients, the way it's all put together, is not quite up to the standards of what you might expect from other SUVs. And you could argue that's okay because that's cheap. Well, you might be surprised. The Chery Omoda GT starts from $38,990 drive away, or $41,490 for the all-wheel drive version, which is what we're testing here. This competes in the same small SUV class as the Kia Seltos, Hyundai Kona, Toyota CHR, Nissan Qashqai, and Suzuki S-Cross. And just browsing around with those vehicles, I've come across some prices. So you can get the Kia Seltos Sport Plus all-wheel drive 1.6 turbo for $39,580. That's excluding on-road costs. So you need to add about $3,000 or $4,000 on top of that to get an on-road cost figure. Similar vehicle, the Hyundai Kona N-Line 1.6 turbo all-wheel drive starts from $40,000 excluding on-road costs. There's also the Nissan Qashqai ST Plus grade for under $40,000, and then you can even jump into a Toyota CHR hybrid for about $42,000 excluding on-road costs. So as you can see, the Chery Omoda is not that cheap actually compared with its nearest rivals. Certainly not a comparison like these pair of sunnies. You can get a premium pair of sunnies for $50 to $100, $200, $300. These were only $16. My argument though is I'm not putting my family in these sunnies, whereas you will be putting your family. You're going to take your kids to school, you're going to take your grandparents to church or whatever. You're going to be carrying people in this. But also, a pair of sunnies isn't the second biggest investment you'll make in your life. Well, not investment, it's actually a loss really, isn't it? But it's not the second biggest cost in your life. You're going to be paying thousands of dollars for any SUV. And as you can see, you can get other SUVs that are more established for around the same price. My other argument is the Chery is not going to hold its value very good in comparison to some of those rivals. Certainly Toyota, I don't know what it is, but Toyotas hold their value really, really well. I'm talking if you look at the official stats, so this is what vehicles have sold for over the last 5 years, for example. Toyotas usually hold most or more of their value than any of their rivals. I'm guessing this Chery Omoda will drop at least 50% of its cost after around 5 or 6 years of ownership. Enough talking and metaphors, let's go and have an actual look at this thing. This is the GT version. It's kind of an update from the model that launched a couple of years ago. It looks basically the same. It's got the same sort of body. It just has updated tech and engine configuration. It looks very smart. It's got these 3-dimensional tail lights, full width tail light trim, which is very fashionable these days. 2 rear spoilers. Not many SUVs have 2 rear spoilers. 2-tone as well. You've got some red highlights around the wheels and side skirts. They're 18-inch wheels fitted with, in my opinion, pretty cheap and nasty tyres called GT Comfort F50 tyres. I'll take it for a drive in a minute. You can see how it handles. And around at the front, we've got a lot going on. It's kind of like a coupe with this big mesh grille and some more red detailing down below. I think the back is probably the best angle. It's got that sort of swooping coupe profile, and it actually looks pretty wide with these side bolster, the wheel arches bolstering out there a little bit. You do have these fake exhaust holes in the bumper bar, but then you actually have twin exhausts underneath. So why wouldn't you just connect those up and have them shooting out the bumper bar there? That'll actually look really good and functional. But yeah, overall, it's definitely got that coupe style of profile about it. It looks distinctive, I'll give it that. You know this is not a whatever, Toyota or Nissan. You know it's something different, something out of the future. Yet more red trimmings for the side mirrors. And then inside, a very smart interior. As you'd expect, these emerging brands are really starting to catch up to the established rivals. Twin screens on the dash there. It all looks very elegant and modern. You've also got ambient lighting, blue around the cup holders, then some more purpley blue along the dashboard there. It definitely looks luxurious and has a bit of that wow factor to it. And historically, you know, this is leaps and bounds ahead of Chery's previous products. It's now well and truly up to scratch with the current standards in terms of interior design and even quality. You've got this felt material for the wireless charging pad with a little cooler there. I'm not sure if that does much, but you know, it's better than nothing, I guess. And a separate pad here just to rest your phone. You've got metallic switchgear and trimmings. This little volume knob doesn't feel that good, but most of the buttons actually feel quite nice. And then you've got these kind of knurled toggle switches on the steering wheel for volume and track and all that sort of thing. I have no doubt that Chery is definitely catching up. And I remember driving the first Omoda 5 a couple of years ago. They've made a number of improvements to this, and I can definitely confirm that it is very much improved from that original model. The first thing I noticed is the driver monitoring camera no longer goes off and sends silly messages on the dashboard. It used to say something like, you are no longer in control of the vehicle, or something like this, when I was just sitting there driving and completely just focused on the road. Now it hasn't gone off at me once. I don't know if they've weakened it off too much, I don't know, but it just seems like it's a more conventional setup like other established models in this class. It also drives a bit nicer as well, but we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, overall, you've got a decent amount of space in here for this size vehicle. Remembering this goes up against the Kia Seltos and so on. I've got good headroom. The only problem is the steering column, it doesn't come down enough. It just stops just there, which means you've got to raise your seat up a bit to get a nice natural position. And the steering wheel itself is also quite large, so you're spinning this thing around. It just feels like it's taking up a lot of room. If I could lower this steering wheel down a bit more, it does move in and out, so that's a good thing. But yeah, if it just come down a little bit more and it was maybe tilted a bit more vertical, because it seems to tilt forward a bit at the top, it'll just be a nicer driving or a more natural driving position for my size anyway. I'm about 170 centimeters. And I do find that, you know, Toyota, CHR, Kia Seltos, all of those aforementioned rivals, they all have a pretty good driving position, whereas this is just a little bit awkward. In the back, we've got climate vents and a charging port, pockets in both seats, and then there's more metallic sort of trim on the back of the seat there, which is a nice touch. The seating comfort in the back here is not too bad. That pillar is quite close to my head, as is usually the case when you do these coupe style of SUVs. But cabin space, well, someone's making some noise down there. Cabin space is not too bad. Apart from that pillar, I've got enough room. I think if I was a little bit taller, you'd get a bit closer to that ceiling, but there is a big cutaway section in the ceiling there. Kind of just gives you a bit of clearance, but this model does have the sunroof, so that has to come down a little bit to make room. Comfort is not too bad. The backrest is a bit firm, but this is a new model, so sometimes they start to soften up a bit after a bit of use. But yeah, the backrest just seems like it's just pushing me out a bit. It's just a little bit too firm. But you do have a center armrest for extra comfort with some cup holders. There's also bottle holders in the doors as well. Boot space is rated at 360 litres, which is not bad. And even though there is a multi-link setup underneath with all-wheel drive, that's not reduced from the previous Omoda 5. And underneath the floor here, you've got a full-size alloy spare wheel, but it seems they've forgotten some of the red paint. Maybe they did that on purpose so you know that you've got the spare wheel on the vehicle, I don't know. A big part of the update for the GT model is an uprated engine. So it's still a 1.5 litre turbo petrol 4-cylinder, now it produces 137 kilowatts. I have timed 0 to 100 on the private road, which we'll get to in a minute, and this is about a second quicker to 100 compared with the original Omoda 5. The times are about on par with the equivalent rivals. I mean, the Seltos and the Kona, they do produce a tiny bit more from their 1.6 turbo, and they are about half a second or a second quicker, but you'd kind of expect that, paying a little bit more for those anyway. The suspension setup is a huge improvement over the original Omoda 5. This can absorb bumps and maintain a decent level of stability and control, unlike the previous generation. It still is, or the previous model, it still is a little bit wobbly for my liking, and I know I'm driving it, you know, not like what a normal person would do around here, but I'm testing it, and this is what I do with every vehicle that I bring along a road like this. So I'm trying to find the weakness, and yeah, this is a little bit wobbly. The front end feels a bit numb, and that big steering wheel, it really throws me off a little bit. But in general, it goes where you point it, and I can feel a level of communication coming through. The tyres are probably the weakest link. I can feel them folding and flexing a little bit under serious turning demands. But yeah, it's poking in quite nicely. And then the power is definitely okay. Just the transmission, it is a dual clutch transmission, and there's a bit of delay as you'd expect. I don't know why they fit dual clutches to vehicles like this. They're great for sports cars, but for practical runarounds like this, they're just not really needed. There's no paddle shifters anyway, so it's not like you can really, you know, engage with it and really maximize that quick shifting credibility anyway. So it's, yeah, I don't think there's a purpose in that. Now this does feature a multi-link rear suspension setup, as I said. It kind of has to because it's all-wheel drive. I've had a look under there, and it does look a little bit, now I don't want to start an argument here, but it just looks a little bit flimsy, just the beams and the cross members and so on, compared with something like the Seltos and Kona, which just look much more chunky and rigid. These beams and things, they just don't look that good. You might have seen the Omoda 5 in Malaysia. It was the front-wheel drive model with the torsion beam rear end, but the rear axle snapped off while this lady, the owner, was just driving along the road at quite slow speed. So yeah, I know that's not applied to the Australian models. There was a recall in Malaysia of 600 vehicles. The press release said, you know, it's nothing to be concerned about. It's an isolated issue, yet we're recalling 600 vehicles. I wouldn't take that, you know, too seriously, but it's definitely a caution. You know, you've got to look at that and think, well, are they up to the level of engineering of the others? Probably not yet, but they're definitely getting there. So on the road, you know, it's not absolutely terrible. It handles okay. It absorbs bumps quite well, actually, although it is a bit bouncy and a bit soft. It can absorb country roads quite well. The steering is a bit numb, and the tyres are definitely the weakest link. I can feel them kind of folding and stretching under serious demands. Not that you'd want to be putting SUVs like this under some serious demands. Sometimes it's just good to know that an underlying platform can handle it if you have to swerve for something on the road or in an emergency situation. I guess it's good to see Chery is coming along. They've evolved quite a bit in just a couple of years. From the original Omoda 5, this is definitely a huge improvement, and I have no doubt they'll be up there with the best of them in a few more years. The technology in particular, the safety assist systems, they're now calibrated so they don't drive you absolutely nuts. Would I buy one? Well, like my trusty pair of $16 sunglasses, I would only buy one if I really, really had to. So if you're really, really tight on your budget, and for some reason you just really want a brand new vehicle, I guess you could buy something like this. It does have a 7-year warranty, which is good, but I would not keep it for very long. I would try and get rid of it after just a few years while it's still got the factory warranty. That way you'll get some money back. But some of the drawbacks, the fuel economy isn't that good. For a 1.5 litre in the real world, I think I'm averaging 9.5 or something like that. I know I have been thrashing it around a little bit, but that's what I do in every vehicle that I get. So if I was to do the same thing in a Toyota CHR, thrashing it around, doing performance testing and everything, I would still have well above 75% fuel left. This is now down below half, and I've only picked it up today. So I don't think the fuel economy is that good when you're pushing it, but when you're cruising on the highway, it has a better potential to lower the consumption. All right, let's head out now to the performance test and see what it goes like.